Welcome to Off the Shelf, short conversations about books with big ideas.
So the first book that we've decided to look at as part of our new Off the Shelf series is The Four Agreements. And if anyone has been talking to us over the last couple of months, this will come as no shock, because I think we've just been spreading the word to anyone who hasn't read the book. We've just loved it so much.
Yeah, I'm beaming as we're, and I have the book in my hand here. I'm just thrilled to be starting with this book because this book has actually changed my life, and I wish I had read it years ago. So yeah, I'm just really happy that we picked this one as the one to go with.
Yeah. What I love about this book and the conversations I've had with people since reading it is that there's different pieces that have kind of resonated with everyone I've spoken to. So it really is one of those pieces that, like, we're all obviously reading the same thing, but it lands differently with people. And I think that's a powerful thing for a book to be able to do, just to reach you in where you are personally.
Yeah, I agree. And the good thing about books at the moment is you can either do them in audio when you're driving, and this is definitely one for that, or you can read them because it's not a long book. It's quite and it's easy to read. I find it easy to read. I have to say the first chapter for me was a bit of a challenge because it's a bit more magical realism. But when you really think about that first chapter, the main point that he's saying is we're all encultured or have grown up thinking things about our world and thinking things about ourselves in our world. Like, we've made almost agreements with ourselves in our minds that this is the way things are, and maybe they're not. And I think that was really powerful for me to rethink some of the assumptions, some of the things that sort of trap us into maybe feelings like not good at something, or that you know that I'm not good enough, or I'm not good at something, may come from a narrative that you may have heard once and that you just bought into, and it mightn't be that at all. So once I started to think about that and then read through the rest of the book, I was blown away. Just thought it was really powerful for me.
Yeah. And even though that first bit is probably the least like accessible of the chapters in the book, I actually found that was my favourite part, because like the four agreements, and we'll talk about it a little bit, but the four agreements that are set out that the author is suggesting like we could now make with ourselves is kind of, I suppose, almost the obvious piece when you're thinking about the book of the four agreements, and that's the bit that a lot of people talk about and think about. But I found that first bit to be powerful in terms of just offering a moment of reflection of like, where have I decided that these things are true? And like whether they are agreements that I've made with myself about, you know, beliefs that I have or beliefs I have about myself or otherwise, and also the agreements that we've made with others. Like, I think you do just through life end up engaging with people in a particular way, and it's because it's just kind of the way that that's done, and you just say to yourself like, when did that kind of happen, or is that how I wanted it to be? And it just offers that point of reflection. So I really enjoyed that first piece.
Yeah, I know I've told the story a few times about the piece where he talks about, you know, a child hearing that they, you know, to stop the racket when they're singing, and then deciding for the rest of their lives that maybe they can't sing. And I've heard so many people say to me in my life that they can't sing, and they can sing, and I'm like, where did that come from? So it's like assumptions that we've just bought into, that we've decided, almost created, that is the way that it is. And these assumptions kind of make prisoners of us, really, or stop us doing things that we really want to do. So I definitely found, as I was reading that, I had to, you know, I was thinking, have I stuff? Of course I do. We all do. And I just loved that it made me stop up and think a bit about that. So I'm really, I'm blown away with that piece. And then that the four agreements themselves, I think, are really powerful. And I know I hear myself saying to people now, I'm trying to be, you know, I'm trying not to make an assumption here, or I'm trying not to take this person. And it's really bound up in reading this book. It's really shaped how I feel about how I want to be at work and at home.
And I do find, even a long time after reading the book, there's still things that come up for me, and I'm kind of like, oh yeah, is that an agreement that I have with myself?
Yeah.
Like, is that belief true? Is that where?
Yeah.
And you know, I'm still learning from having read it, you know, an amount of time ago. And I think like even that first agreement about being impeccable with your word, that alone has so many layers and ways of applying. Like, I suppose, you know, that obvious piece in terms of not wanting to cause hurt or damage, you know, when you're engaging with others, which of course all of us really try to do, but looking at it in terms of yourself then as well. and that internal dialogue that we all have is a whole other layer to it again.
Yeah. I think when I came across this, because I've done research over the years around bullying or incivility and just the culture work that we do, gossip comes up a lot, or the way people talk comes up a lot. And it's so easy to just have slippage in the way that you talk, because if you're frustrated, you could very easily say something that could hurt someone else. Or and this was the first time I saw on paper some like this sort of explicit saying, do you know what, you actually need to be impeccable with how you speak about yourself, to yourself, but also how you speak about others. And it sort of gave me an anchor to think, yeah, no, I'm not on the wrong track when I feel really strongly about that gossip isn't okay. And I really feel that I feel it's very damaging, or that micropolitics, where, people in a corner talk about other people, that causes so much hurt. So when I saw that piece as one of the agreements, it felt like coming home. It felt like, finally I'm seeing somewhere somebody's writing about this, and I feel so strongly about it myself. So I was really pleased to see this. But I was struck with the importance of being impeccable with yourself too. Like the self-talk that we do, we can be really harsh on ourselves and really critical of ourselves more than other people even sometimes. I wonder sometimes, do we do that to stop the other person doing it? We kind of get in there first and say whatever it is needs to be said. But you're sending out messages about yourself when you do that, or you put yourself down. That he really calls out in the book, and I was like, yeah, absolutely spot on.
Like, it is confronting in that way though, isn't it? Because that piece, and I know we've had a conversation about this before, but that piece around, like, because we can be our own worst critic and our own biggest judge, I think is the word that's often used in the book, like, that we create the standard of how we accept others to engage with us.
Yeah.
That, like, we'll accept abuse from someone to the point where we abuse ourselves, or to the severity in which we abuse ourselves. And it's only when someone goes above that we would walk away from that situation or do something differently. But it is quite confronting, because it really makes you take ownership in terms of, like, how you are engaging with yourself, and the impact that is having on obviously your day to day, and also what you can tolerate from others. And I know there's, there's so many different situations, that could be relevant in that situation, which may be different. But I suppose it does challenge us to think about how we're thinking and talking about ourselves.
Yeah. Do you know, it's influenced me so much that I have found myself in conversations. It can be really hard when somebody starts to talk about someone, and you don't want to be involved in that, and you want to hold it. But now I found it's almost given me a way to say, do you know, I just want to be impeccable with my word here, and I'm almost like setting a tone. It's almost given me permission, or a phrase that I can use to set a tone, an ethical tone for the way that I want to be in that conversation. So for me, this one was huge, and I think for leaders it's really big, because it gives you a capacity to be able to say, it's important that we're impeccable here, and kind of sets an ethical tone. Love it. I really found that powerful.
And it is wordage to use as well, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, and I think even people that I know that have read it, when we've used the phrase, they've responded, or I've heard other people say it now. So I think it's really powerful. The other one that really struck me is don't take it personally, and that's huge and really hard to do. But it made me think about, we do take stuff fairly personally. It's hard to separate the personal from the professional sometimes, or so being able to, I think when I read that he was saying nothing that anybody else does is actually about you, it's more about themselves and their own interior world, that's given me a bit of comfort when stuff has come at me and I've been thinking, God, that's way harsh. Or, I might be doing my best and something comes at you really hard, but then you realise, that's a manifestation of where they're coming from, but it's not how I'm feeling about the work that I'm doing. And it's helped me feel a bit healthier about work.
And it is that piece, like, it is that piece, like, you know, that could put, that could be relevant in that situation. But I suppose it does challenge us to think about how we're thinking and talking about ourselves. And, it is really it is so difficult. We get caught up in our own lives so much that you think everyone else is thinking that way at times.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's crazy, isn't it? Because it's exactly what you're saying there, that people are coming with their own agreements that they've made, you know, with themselves, their own experiences, their own beliefs, and they're interacting with you off of that basis. Like, in so much of the time, it's about them and about those beliefs or whatever it is that's going on rather than you. So it's like, we all do it, but it is almost silly when it's written, you know, that way in front of you and you're reading it, isn't it? It is like, oh yeah, not everything is about me, shock, you know, because you know, it does feel that way, obviously, to each and every one of us.
Yeah. And, you know, we'll have heard that phrase loads growing up, you know, don't take it personally, or we'd say to each other, don't take it personally, you know, but now it feels really personal when someone's coming with tough stuff. But when we think about, is that really mine to own? Or actually maybe it's not. And if it feels toxic, well, that's a manifestation of where the person is at. It doesn't mean that I'm toxic or that my behaviour is toxic. So being able to separate out from that and say, that's not actually who I am. And I'm not taking that personally, so I'm not going to carry that. You know, my sister used to always say to me, like, why are you letting that rent space in your head? I'd be like, I have no idea why. And then I think when I read that, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It's just it's a pattern of thinking that you can get into that's really unhealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the next one, to be honest, that resonated with me the most, I think, really, is that don't make assumptions piece.
Yeah.
Like, huge.
Yeah.
And, you know, you go around thinking, oh no, like, I don't really make assumptions, or I'm not that judgmental. But, like, all we're doing is, you know, passing judgment and making assumptions. And like, that's part of life. Look, you know, it is what it is. But, like, at least it creates that bit more of an awareness around it, I suppose. And like, even like, if I find myself doing it now, I at least notice that bit more that I'm doing it. Or like, what it's actually made a big difference for me in is, like, not making an assumption. You know, obviously there's an important piece around not making an assumption that everything is okay or everything isn't okay, or, you know, just having those open and honest conversations, you know, regardless of whether it be at work or at home or whatever it is. But I think it's brought to the fore for me not to make an assumption that someone knows how I'm thinking or feeling, and like, in a positive way. Like, if I have something nice to say, or like, I have something that I'm really grateful for, or something that I just would have left go before because I'd be like, oh, that can go unsaid, I'll just say it now.
Me too.
Because it's like, why am I making an assumption that person... And like, we've actually even done it. We've been like, I assume, you know, when we've worked together, if kind of like, look, I assume this is where we're at, but just to be sure, I'm saying this, or, you know, that type of thing. And it just cuts away all of the potential for misunderstanding.
Yeah, I think it keeps a relationship safe, but I also think, you know, life is short and it's precious, and you know that you know, we can lose people or different things can happen, but if you know that you've said to them how much you appreciate them, or how much that you love them, or how much you'd be lost without them, that you're not assuming they know that you've said it. It's actually a comfort when tough stuff comes knocking at your door. So I think that's really important piece. But also, I've after reading the book, I've noticed that people assume that I'm thinking something because I'm, you know, I might be in a leadership role, or I might be leading out on a project or a piece of work, and I see the assumptions more clearly now. So I'm even saying, you know, can we just check that, so that this is what I'm thinking? And they're kind of surprised, you know, but we make so much assumptions. You can leave a conversation and both think you had exactly the same understanding, and then find out, like, the complete polar opposite was the way that people were feeling about it than the way that you thought they were feeling about it. So no assumptions. I think that's but it's hard to do it because I think we just spend our whole life making judgments and processing information based on our interpretation of what's happened, and it can feel a bit, can we just check here, feel a bit awkward, but I do it a lot now. I definitely do, to avoid making assumptions.
And I suppose it's about finding ways that are just workable and make that easy, isn't it? Like, there's practicalities to something like that as well, but I think it's no harm in thinking about, like, particularly in the workplace even, like, what structures could you put in place that, even if it is just at the end of a meeting being like, okay, so just this is, you know, what we discussed, or whether it's, you know, following up, it's whatever it is, whatever way works that's not overkill and makes it still meaningful, I suppose, and not a chore. It's just making sure we're all on the same page and that we have clarity in what we're doing.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I learned when I moved into the head role was how hard the job is, and how people don't know what they don't know. And I know, and that's about assumption. So people assume that you're doing something for a particular reason, but they might know that there's a huge complexity over here that you're managing, and some of it you can say and some of it you can't. So one of the things that I've taken away from that role based on this book is I'm now going to assume the more benevolent assumption about something. So whoever I'm now working with who's leading something, I'm going to trust that they're doing the right thing for us all, and I'm going to offer my help. Now, it won't always be like that. There'll be occasions where it won't be there, but I'm actually going to choose where I do make an assumption, it's a positive one, and I'm going to invite whoever it is that I'm working with into that positive space and hope that it works out, but always check against my assumptions. So the book was powerful for changing almost my mindset into a more positivity mindset about the assumptions that I'm making behind why somebody made a decision now.
Yeah.
You know, if that makes sense. So I like that.
Yeah, it's huge, yeah.
And the last one is always do your best, right?
It's lovely.
I just love that. And you know, most of us now, as in the education space, we really do work hard and we really do try to do our best. But what I completely loved about this and has really helped me in my life is my best at 9 o'clock in the morning may not be my best at 2 in the afternoon. It's definitely not my best at 10 o'clock at night. And that's fine. Mm-hmm. I'm doing my current best. And I get up the following day and I start again to try and do my best. And I definitely feel less stressed and more liberated when I began to think like that.
Yeah. Like, what's powerful about this book, and I mean particularly that sentiment of do your best, is like, it's in one way liberating, and then in another way it still pushes you, I suppose. So it's like that perfect balance where it's like, okay, my best today is just not as good as my best was yesterday for whatever reason, or this month, or whatever it is. But it's not in a way of like, oh, do you know, it's just 9 o'clock there and I must log in, and I'm not really a morning person, so I might do an hour's work there after lunch or whatever it is. It's like,
it's not that.
It's you have to do your best, you know, and like you might have to give your best to lots of different things this day or this week or whatever it is, and that's okay. But you're still trying your best and you're being impeccable with your word and knowing that you're trying your best, you know. So it's like, it's comforting in one way, but it also does, it's not kind of like an off the hook sort of a thing in how you think about the way that you're engaging. It is, you really are trying your best, you know, just that might look different.
Yeah. I worked with somebody and I've carried it through my life since then. And it's when I read this part of this book, it made sense to me. But she talked about this is our current best thinking. So the decision I'm making now, I'm making for the right reasons, or the conversation we're having, this is our current best thinking. It might be different in a year's time, but at that time it was our current best thinking. And when you believe that and you work from that basis as a leader or as a teacher, you are less stressed about the decisions that you make, because you know that you were doing your best and it was your current best thinking. You know you were impeccable with your word. You weren't shafting somebody or taking them out with the knees. You know that you're not making assumptions about what's going on, you know, and you're not taking things personally. So you're coming at it in an ethical, human-centered kind of way, like where the other person is valued and you're valuing yourself in the same way. So for me, this is like a leader textbook. It's like how to be a leader for me. I absolutely love this book.
Yeah, and I haven't met one person that's read it that hasn't gotten something out of it. It's one of those books, isn't it? And I know there'll be plenty of people listening to this now that will have read it already, like, and will be thinking, you know, about the different pieces that resonated with them. And like, there's no one I've heard of that's read it that hasn't gotten something from it. It's powerful. Like, we visited it and revisited it, you know.
And we've put it on on some of our modules and some of our teaching. We've put it into the conversations that we're having with people in CPD around leadership as well. So he's probably going to get a rake of sales now. The book's going to be super popular again because it's written for a while. But I cannot recommend this highly enough. It has changed my life. Not sponsored. We could do with a bit of sponsorship. Not sponsored. But no, even when I go into Eason's and I'm looking, my favourite thing to do is just look across the bookshelves, and I was in there over the weekend and there was a whole set of them. And then, of course, there's the Fifth Agreement because he's written another one, but that's another book for another conversation. But I smile every time I walk past it, and I kind of, I've 3 copies of it. I just always have one. I've one in the bag, and then I've one on the shelf, and I just don't want to be without it. I absolutely love it.
This is it, yeah. And I know we didn't quite do a summary, but that's not what we're hoping to do here. It's really just to have a chat about how it resonated with us. But if you're interested in having a look and you like what you heard there, you'll be able to find it, most places. It's a great book.
Yeah, it's also on, I think it's on Spotify, it's on Audible. It's highly available to read. Make the time for it, I would say. But I think you can sometimes over-describe something, but this book has really changed my life and has given me a lot of comfort and has helped me manage some of the stressful stuff that's come at me. So if there's one book that I think should be in every leader's toolkit, it's definitely this one.